Okay, so we're going to have a quick tutorial on proportions, drawing the proportions of the body. So let's get into it. Typically speaking, what we'd have is we'd have our head, and then we'd want about, this is the classical method, we want about 8 heads. So from here down we'd want about 8. So let's see if I can work that. Cool. So it's going to merge a couple of these layers here. So this is the scale that we'd want, okay? And we'd obviously have a straight line down here. This is where the feet would be. Then we divide this so basically in half. So, and this is where the bottom of the crutch would be, okay? And just here, one more head down, that would be the chest. This would be the navel, the belly button here. So let's move in a bit closer so you guys can see, and we'll start drawing it. So put our neck in here. So the width is about 3 heads. So our hips would be just underneath our navel, just here. And we want our hands to finish. Our hands would be just below the crotch area. So have our hands here. Our elbow is around about halfway through the arm here. This is of course just very rough. And then we'd have our the rest of our body here. So we'd have our knee would be about here for these guys, for our legs. And then if I take this guide away here, you can see that's our basic proportions. So there are a few things that I personally think if you take this diagram I just drew and you match it up with a photo, there are some things that don't quite work the way they should. But for the most part, this is as accurate as you can get. Now, the problem you have here is when you are drawing a character, say for example you have him in a pose. So let's just do a rough, he's slightly bent forwards. His legs are spread wide. It's a bit horrible, guys, I'm sorry. Just drawing a quick example for you guys. So now we come into the problem that, okay, he's meant to be 8 heads high, but his legs are splayed apart, so we know how many, if there's 4 heads from here to here, if he's standing up straight. But if he's tilted forwards, that's going to be different. You know, we know there's about 4 heads from the bottom of the crutch here to the foot here, but you know, we don't particularly want to get there and go like, okay, let's draw some heads in here. Okay, now we'll draw some heads in here. Make sure it all lines up properly. Especially when you start putting in, you know, perspective and foreshortening and stuff like that. So we need some shortcuts. So let's go through what are some quick shortcuts that are easier for me to understand, to remember. So for me, the first one would be the elbow sits basically in line with the belly button. So if this guy was to raise his arm up, so let's say he moves his arm over here, the elbow, and you know what, let's take that back, let's do that in a red so you can see. The elbow will be in line with this curve here. So if we draw a big circle, that's where the elbow will line up. So keep that in mind, it doesn't matter where you've got the arm, that's where the elbow is. If you do that, for the most part, you should be right in the placement of that arm and how long that arm is. Okay, simple enough. Okay, let's move on. The next thing is the hand will be just below the crotch area. So again, if I draw a big circle like this, you'll see that hand will always be, provided the arm's not bent like this, in line with that circle there. So if he bends his arm, obviously what we want to do is the arm is divided into 2. So this distance here will be the same as this distance here, generally speaking. Not all the time, especially when you're doing foreshortening, but just generally, that's what we want. Okay, so let's just take this red stuff and we'll chuck it on a different layer real quick. Alright, okay. Alright, so the other thing that I do is if I look at the distance between the clavicle here and the hips, this is roughly this distance here of the leg, roughly, not exactly, and keep that in mind. We're not working in exacts here, we're estimating just to get a rough idea. So if I take the clavicle on my main guy over here, so first of all let's make him a bit bigger. Alright, so this is our clavicle here. If we take the distance between here and here, it's roughly the distance between here and here. This is equivalent to that. roughly. Keeping in mind now that this guy, he's tilted slightly forwards like this, so this distance here will appear shorter than what it actually is. So, but if I go, what I do is I don't draw a line, I just touch. So I'll touch my pen here, and then I'll touch my pen down here, and then I'll do the same here. Touch, 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 and that's my distance worked out there. Okay? So let's draw this up a little bit nicer for us, eh? Again, so the head, so the bottom of the chest, if we turn this back on here, well, I've moved it, so let's move this head guy back up here. So the bottom of the chest would roughly be 2 heads down if he was standing up straight. Now, obviously, if I was to take this head, let's see how we do first of all. Take this head and I pull it down. There you go. It's pretty much on par there. Pretty much 2 heads, which is what we want. Obviously, this guy's neck is a bit stretched out compared to the guy standing up straight, but that's pretty much on par where we want it, so that's good. Now I think you'll find that my guy is actually a little bit wider than 3 heads apart, but that's mainly because I've given him nice muscly shoulders. And just another thing to keep in mind when you're working on your proportions and your anatomy in general is the way the hips work. So it's a little bit off topic, but we'll get into it anyway. So we've got our hips. Okay, we'll just do this for the hips, and then we have our thigh bones working on the outside like that. What we don't have is we don't have it starting from the center here. So if you're working this way, this is incorrect. This one here is correct. Okay, so it's rotating from up here. That's the rotation point. It's up the top, not in the center, down in the center like that. Okay, keep that in mind as well, guys. Alright, so let's keep going with this. So again, if I go here and here, here and here, this is roughly where my knee is. And again, here and here and here and here, that's where my foot's going to be down there. Again, so let's tap that again. Yep, that's about right. And this is where the belly button would be, just there. So I'm just going to take my eraser just to make it a bit clearer. Just erase that bit there for you. This is where our rib cage would fall in. like this. Okay, so there you go, guys. So again, just touching on that, elbows will line up with the belly button. Okay, roughly 2 heads down for the bottom of the chest, 4 heads for the torso, 4 heads for the legs. So the torso is going from top of the head to the bottom of the crutch. 4 heads here, 4 heads here, roughly, you know. Of course, tall people are going to be different. You're going to have lots of different kinds of bodies to draw, so you know, don't get locked into just doing the typical all the time. Okay, yeah, again, another tip, if you're worried about, oh, are the legs the right length, you know, you don't want to measure out the heads, you can just basically go tap, 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 and you can see they're essentially the same distances, just as a rough guide. And yeah, they're the main things. 3 head widths for the shoulders, and yeah, they're the basic parameters I use to quickly rough in some proportions. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed watching, and if you would like more, please subscribe.